I'm standing in the middle of a room filled with people who are supposed to love me, and I can feel my pulse hammering in my throat. There's a screen behind me, a microphone in my mother's hand, and a silence so sharp it feels like glass. She clears her throat, smiles the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes, and says my name. Then she says the words that split my life into before and after. We have proof. Gasps ripple. Someone laughs nervously. I look for my father, expecting him to stop this, but he nods. The envelope opens. Numbers, letters, certainty. DNA. And in that moment, I realized this party was never meant to celebrate me. It was designed to destroy me. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal, and if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button, because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I turned 30 believing I understood who I was. I had built a life on that belief, career choices, friendships, even the way I loved. 30 felt like a checkpoint, not an ending. I rented the venue myself, chose the playlist, and invited people who mattered. My parents insisted on hosting, on paying for the special surprise. I remember thinking how rare that was, how maybe this year things would finally feel uncomplicated between us. Growing up, my family was polished from the outside. Good schools, smiling photos, dinner conversations that never went too deep. I learned early that approval was conditional. Love existed, but it had rules. Break them and you paid quietly. So when my parents offered to make my 30th unforgettable, I took it as a peace offering. I didn't see the warning signs. I didn't hear the undercurrent in my mother's voice when she said, "Everyone will finally know the truth." The room was full that night. Friends from university, colleagues, neighbors, even a few distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. Candles glowed, glasses clinked. I felt nervous, but in the way you feel before a speech, not before an execution. My best friend squeezed my arm and whispered, "Relax, tonight is about you." I believed her. Halfway through the evening, my father tapped his fork against his glass. The sound cut through the chatter like a blade. He spoke about legacy, about honesty, about how families should never live with secrets. Each word felt oddly rehearsed. Then he handed the microphone to my mother, who held it with both hands, as if bracing herself. She started with my childhood, how difficult I'd been, how different. People laughed politely. I felt heat rise in my face. This wasn't how birthday speeches usually went, but I told myself she was nervous. Then she said it. We decided to do a DNA test. The room shifted. Confusion, curiosity, discomfort. My heart stumbled. I searched their faces, waiting for the punchline that would make this all a strange joke. There was no joke. She explained, slowly, carefully, that they had always suspected I wasn't fully theirs, that certain traits didn't align, that questions had lingered for decades, and now at last they had answers. She lifted the envelope like a verdict. I remember thinking how surreal it was that something so small could erase 30 years. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been blindsided by family in public, by people who weaponized truth when privacy would have been mercy. But knowing that now doesn't soften what it felt like then, standing there while my identity was reduced to percentages. My father took the microphone back. His voice was steady, almost relieved. He said the results proved I wasn't biologically his. A collective inhale swept the room. Some people stared at the floor. Others stared at me like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong party. I couldn't speak. My ears rang. 30 years of memories reeled past me, every argument, every moment of distance suddenly reframed as evidence. I wanted to scream that DNA doesn't raise a child, that love does. But my body wouldn't cooperate. I felt small, exposed, humiliated. Then my mother said the sentence that still echoes in my head. We thought it was only fair you found out this way. This way. Under lights. In front of everyone. On my birthday. I looked around, desperate for an anchor. That's when I noticed someone standing near the back, half hidden by the crowd. Someone I didn't expect to see. Someone whose eyes never left mine. There was recognition there, shock, yes, but also something else. Certainty. My chest tightened, because in that instant I understood that my parents weren't the only ones who had come prepared, and whatever was about to happen next would change far more than just my relationship with them. The microphone slipped from my mother's hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud. The room buzzed with whispers, and the person in the back took a step forward. That's when I realized the DNA results were only the beginning. The person in the back took another step forward, and the crowd shifted instinctively, as if making space for gravity itself. I didn't know who they were, not really, but my body reacted before my mind could catch up. A chill ran through me, sharp and unmistakable, the kind that tells you something buried is clawing its way to the surface. My mother noticed the movement too. Her speech faltered. For the first time that night, her composure cracked. My father followed her gaze, frowned, then stiffened. It was subtle, but I saw it. I saw recognition flash across his face, quickly smothered by irritation. "Who is that?" someone near the front whispered. I should have said something, anything, but my legs felt rooted to the floor, my mouth dry. 30 years of certainty had just been ripped away from me, and now my instincts were screaming that more was coming, something heavier, something my parents hadn't planned for. The man, because now I could see clearly that it was a man, was maybe in his late 50s, tall, broad shoulder softened by time. He wore a dark jacket that looked worn, not fashionable, like it had lived a life. His face held lines that spoke of work, not comfort, and his eyes were unsettling, not because they were cold, but because they were familiar. He stopped a few feet from the edge of the circle everyone had unconsciously formed around me. Our eyes locked. The room faded. I forgot about the music, the guests, even my parents. It felt like standing in front of a mirror that showed a version of myself I'd never been allowed to see. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice carried without effort. "I didn't plan to speak tonight." My mother snapped back into control instantly. "This is a private family matter," she said sharply. "You shouldn't be here." A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. People exchanged looks. This was no longer uncomfortable entertainment. It was something raw, something real, the kind of moment people would remember. The man didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on me. "I know," he said, "but I think you deserve more than what you've been given." My father stepped forward now, jaw clenched. "We don't need interference. Security." "Don't," the man interrupted. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm. "You've done enough in public for one night." My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid I might pass out. I finally found my voice, though it barely sounded like mine. "Do I know you?" He swallowed. I watched his throat move. "No," he said. Then, after a pause that stretched painfully long, "But I know you." That sentence hit harder than the DNA results. He reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, as if aware that every movement mattered. A few people tensed. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it up, not to me, but to my parents. My mother's face drained of color. "I promised myself I wouldn't do this," he continued, "unless you forced my hand. Tonight, you did." "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling now. He turned to me again. "It's proof," he said softly, "the kind that doesn't come from a lab." The irony almost broke me. My father laughed, a short, brittle sound. "This is absurd. You think you can just walk in here and—" "I can," the man said, "because I was there." There? When? Where? My mind raced through possibilities. An affair, a mistake, a story I'd never been told. My stomach twisted. "There when?" I asked. He hesitated, then answered, "The night you were born." The room erupted into noise, gasps, murmurs, sharp intakes of breath. Someone near the bar dropped a glass. It shattered unnoticed. My mother shook her head violently. "No," she said, "that's not true. You promised." "You promised too," he said, finally looking at her, and the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. "You promised you wouldn't turn them against the child." Child. Me. I felt like I was watching a play where everyone else had rehearsed their lines. Memories began to rearrange themselves. My mother's distance when I asked about family history, my father's obsession with appearances, the way certain questions were always shut down. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one who grew up sensing something was off but never being allowed to name it. That intuition you learn to ignore because the truth feels too dangerous. "What are you saying?" I demanded. "Say it clearly." The man took a breath. His hands were shaking now. "I'm saying that humiliating you with half a truth doesn't make them honest. And I'm saying that if anyone deserves answers tonight, it's you." He unfolded the paper, old, yellowed at the edges. He handed it to me. It was a hospital document, a birth record. My name was there, my date of birth, and under father, a name I didn't recognize. Not my father's. The blood roared in my ears. "This is fake," my father snapped. "It's certified, and it's not the only thing." My mother's eyes filled with tears now, but they weren't the kind that ask for forgiveness. They were defensive, cornered. "You had no right," she whispered. "I had every right," he said. "I stayed silent for 30 years because you asked me to, because you said it would protect them." He nodded towards me. "But tonight wasn't protection. It was cruelty." I looked between them, these people who had shaped my entire understanding of family. "Is this true?" I asked my mother. Her eyes couldn't meet me. That answer was louder than any confession. My knees buckled slightly, and I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. The man stepped forward instinctively, as if to catch me, then stopped, uncertain of his place. "I don't want to replace anyone," he said quickly. "I didn't come to take something away. I came because you deserve to know that you weren't an accident. You were wanted." That word, wanted, hit a wound I didn't know I had. Before I could respond, my father slammed his hand on the table. "This is over," he barked. "Everyone out." No one moved, because just then another voice spoke from the crowd, a voice calm, clear, and unmistakably confident. "I think we should all stay. Because the DNA results your parents shared, they're not complete." Every head turned, and the person who spoke was someone I trusted, someone I never imagined would be part of this. My breath caught as they stepped into the light. The voice came from my left, steady, controlled, unmistakably familiar. I turned slowly, dread coiling in my stomach, and saw her. Lena, my best friend, the person who had held my hand minutes earlier and told me to relax, the person who knew my life better than anyone in that room. For a second, my mind refused to process it. This didn't fit the script I was already struggling to survive. "What do you mean, not complete?" my father snapped, though his confidence was gone now, replaced by something sharp and defensive. Lena stepped forward, heels clicking against the floor with a composure that felt almost surgical. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't nervous, she looked prepared. In her hand was a slim folder, the kind professionals carry, not party guests. "I mean," she said, meeting my eyes briefly before looking at my parents, "that what you shared was selective, and selective truth is still a lie." A murmur swept the room again. People leaned in, phones forgotten, breath held. This had crossed from awkward family drama into something else entirely, something with consequences. My head spun. "Lena," I said hoarsely, "what is happening?" She exhaled, and for the first time I saw hesitation flicker across her face. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. "I begged them not to do it publicly." "Them." My stomach dropped. "You knew?" I whispered. She nodded once. "Not everything, not at first, but enough." My mother's voice cracked. "You had no right involving her." "You involved everyone," Lena replied calmly. "I just refused to sit quietly." She turned to me fully now. "Do you remember when I convinced you to do one of those ancestry kits a few years ago? The one you laughed about and never sent in?" A memory surfaced, half-formed, dismissed at the time. A casual suggestion, a joke. "Yes," I said slowly. "I sent mine in," she continued, "and I work in data analysis now, genetic mapping. Long story short, when your parents approached me last year asking questions about you, things didn't line up." My father scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Lena asked. She opened the folder. "Because your test confirms he isn't your biological father," she nodded toward the man standing near me, "but it doesn't confirm what you implied." My pulse thundered. "Implied what?" "That you're somehow less legitimate," she said carefully. "That you're an outsider who infiltrated this family." The room went still. They wanted the story to end there, clean, simple, humiliating but controlled. She swallowed. "But genetics doesn't work that way." She handed me a document, different format, different lab. My hands shook as I scanned it, my eyes snagging on percentages, markers, annotations I barely understood. Then I saw the highlighted section. Maternal match, inconclusive. "Inconclusive?" I echoed. Lena nodded. "Which is statistically rare. So rare that it only happens in a handful of scenarios." My mother's breathing became shallow. I could see panic now, naked and unfiltered. "What scenarios?" I asked. Lena hesitated, then said it plainly. "When the woman listed as the mother may not be the biological mother." The words didn't land immediately. They hovered, absurd, impossible. "I don't understand." The man beside me, the one who claimed to be there the night I was born, closed his eyes. "You weren't supposed to," he murmured. I turned to him sharply. "What does that mean?" He opened his eyes again, and I saw regret there, deep, long carried. "Because the truth wasn't just complicated, it was buried." My mother let out a sob, half laugh. "Stop," she said. "This has gone too far." "No," Lena said calmly. "It stopped being too far when you turned their birthday into a trial." I felt like the floor was tilting. "Are you saying," I began, my voice barely audible, "that she might not be my mother?" Silence answered me. That was enough. I laughed, a sharp, broken sound that startled even me. "So let me get this straight. You humiliated me publicly with DNA results, but you didn't bother to mention that the story might not even include you?" My father exploded. "That's enough," he shouted. "We gave you everything, a home, a name, a life." "And a lie," I shot back, the anger finally cutting through the shock. Lena stepped closer to me. "There's more," she said gently, "but I wanted you to hear it privately. I think that privacy left this room a long time ago." She nodded. "Fair." She turned to the man again. "You said you were there when they were born. Tell them why." He took a shaky breath. "Because I wasn't just there. I was asked to be." "Asked by who?" I demanded. He looked at my mother. "She couldn't. Not safely." My chest tightened painfully. "Couldn't what?" "Carry you," he replied. The word hung in the air like smoke. Images flashed through my mind, hospital smells I couldn't remember, stories that never quite added up, my mother's avoidance of pregnancy conversations. "Then whose child am I?" I asked, my voice cracking now despite every effort to remain composed. My mother finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, swollen, stripped of superiority. "You are ours," she said weakly, "in every way that mattered." "That's not an answer," I said. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The man spoke instead. "There was another woman," he said, "someone who never stopped thinking about you." My breath caught. "Where is she?" He hesitated, just long enough for dread to bloom fully in my chest. "She's here," he said. The room erupted into chaos, people turning, whispering, scanning faces. My vision tunneled as I searched the crowd, every stranger suddenly a possibility. "Where?" I demanded. He raised his hand slightly, pointing not to the back, not to the doors, but to the right side of the room, near the cake table. I followed his gaze, and when I saw her, my heart stopped, because she had been there all night, watching me, waiting, and she was crying. I stared at her, frozen, as the world narrowed to a single point. She stood near the cake table, one hand gripping the edge for support, the other pressed to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't trying to be seen. If anything, she looked like she'd been trying not to be noticed all night. Our eyes met, and something in me broke open. I can't explain it logically. There was no memory, no recognition I could articulate, just a sensation, deep, visceral, undeniable, like a door unlocking somewhere in my chest that I hadn't known existed. My breath hitched, my vision blurred. "That's not possible," I whispered, though I was already moving. People parted without resistance as I walked toward her. I didn't hear the whispers anymore. I didn't hear my parents arguing behind me, my father shouting that this had gone too far, my mother sobbing that she never meant for it to end like this. None of it mattered. There was only the woman in front of me, trembling, terrified, hopeful in a way that felt unbearably fragile. I stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the lines around her eyes, the way her hands shook. She looked ordinary, no dramatic resemblance, no cinematic reveal, and yet, standing there, I felt more exposed than I ever had in my life. "Hi," she said softly, her voice cracked on the single word. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She took a small step forward, then stopped herself, as if afraid to cross an invisible boundary. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "I never wanted this. Not like this. I didn't even want to come tonight, but he said—" She glanced briefly toward the man who had first stepped forward. "He said you deserved to know." I looked at him. "You brought her?" I said. He nodded. "She asked me to," he replied, "years ago, in case something like this ever happened." Years. The weight of that word settled heavily on me. "You've been planning for this?" I asked her. She shook her head violently. No, I planned for never happening, she said, but I prepared in case it did. I swallowed hard. Who are you? Her lips trembled. She took a breath, steadying herself. My name is Sarah, and I carried you. The room seemed to tilt again like it had earlier, but this time I didn't grab for support. I just stood there, letting the truth wash over me in waves: shock, disbelief, grief, curiosity, anger, hope, too many emotions colliding at once. I don't understand. Why give me up? Why let them... I didn't give you up, she said quickly. Not the way you're thinking. She glanced at my parents again, then back at me. I was young. I needed money. They needed help. It was supposed to be simple. A legal agreement. No contact, no confusion. A surrogate? I said faintly. Yes. The word echoed in my head. Surrogate. Transactional. Clinical. Nothing like the storm raging inside me. My mother cried out suddenly. It was supposed to be private, she sobbed. It was no one else's business. I turned sharply. No one else's business? I repeated. You made it everyone's business. She flinched. Lena stood near me now, her presence grounding. The irony is that the DNA test you used to shame them is what exposed the rest. My father's face had gone gray. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. We raised you, he said again, weaker now. Doesn't that count for anything? It does, and I meant it, but so does the truth. Sarah wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. I never expected to meet you. I followed your life from a distance, graduations, jobs. I knew where you were because I couldn't not know. She let out a shaky breath. I told myself it was enough to see you happy. I felt a sharp pang at that. You've been watching me? She nodded, ashamed. Only from afar, never interfering. I respected the boundaries. Tonight was the first time I broke them. I glanced around the room at the guests who had come to celebrate my existence and were now witnesses to its unraveling. I felt exposed, but also strangely lighter, as if something that had always pressed on me was finally named. I need air, I said suddenly. Lena immediately stepped forward. I'll come with you. No, I said gently. I looked at Sarah. I want to talk, just us. Her eyes widened. Are you sure? I nodded. We stepped outside together into the cool night air. The noise from inside dulled to a distant hum as the doors closed behind us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city lights flickered in the distance. Somewhere inside, my birthday cake sat untouched. I don't know what to say, I admitted finally. That's okay. You don't owe me anything. I studied her face, searching for answers I didn't even know how to ask for. Did you ever regret it? She didn't hesitate. Every day, she said, and also never. I frowned. How is that possible? Because regret implies a choice I could undo, and I can't. But I don't regret you. I regret the world that made that choice feel necessary. Her words landed softly but deeply. We stood in silence again. Then I asked the question that had been clawing at me since the moment I saw her. Why now? She looked down at her hands. Because your parents were scared, she said. They thought if they didn't control the narrative, they'd lose you. I laughed bitterly. They lost me the moment they tried to weaponize my existence. She looked up at me then, eyes shining with something dangerously close to hope. What happens now? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the life I walked into that building with no longer existed, and the one waiting on the other side of those doors was uncertain, fragile, and terrifyingly real. Before I could say anything else, the doors behind us burst open. Lena rushed out, breathless. You need to come back inside, I asked. Why? Her face was pale. Because your parents just said something they can't take back. My stomach dropped. What did they say? I asked. She swallowed. Your parents said the DNA test wasn't just about you. And suddenly, I knew this story was still unfolding. I followed Lena back inside, my steps slow, deliberate, like I was walking toward a second impact I could already feel coming. Sarah stayed just behind me, close enough that I could sense her presence without turning around. The doors opened and the room rushed back in, noise, light, faces strained with anticipation. Every conversation stopped the moment we entered. My father was standing at the center again, one hand gripping the back of a chair as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. My mother sat beside him, eyes swollen, mascara streaked, her composure fully shattered now. The envelope that had started all of this lay open on the table, its contents scattered like debris after an explosion. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. My father looked at me, then at the room, as if realizing too late that he had lost control of the narrative. "We said," he began, then stopped. His jaw tightened. "We said the test wasn't only about you." A low murmur rippled through the guests. "Then who was it about?" I pressed. He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. This was never just about curiosity or closure. This had been calculated, strategic. Lena crossed her arms. "You might as well finish it," she said. "You've already gone this far." My mother shook her head weakly. "Please," she whispered, "not here." "Here is exactly where this belongs," I replied. "You chose the stage." My father exhaled sharply as if surrendering to gravity. "We wanted to know," he said, "if we'd been lied to twice." The room went cold. "Twice?" I repeated. He looked away from me and scanned the crowd. "About parentage," he continued, "about loyalty, about blood." A knot formed in my stomach. "You're not making sense." He raised his head and finally met my eyes. "The DNA test showed you weren't biologically mine, but that wasn't the only irregularity." My pulse spiked. "What irregularity?" My mother spoke now, her voice trembling. "We tested other samples," she said. Lena stiffened. "Other samples?" she echoed. "Yes," my father said, "because if one lie existed, we had to know how deep it went." A horrible thought crept into my mind. I turned slowly, scanning the faces of the people in the room, friends, relatives, co-workers. Suddenly they all felt too close. "Whose DNA did you test?" I asked. My father swallowed. "Someone else who was connected to you." The room erupted again, questions, whispers, disbelief. I felt my heart pounding against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. "Connected how?" I demanded. My mother squeezed her eyes shut. "We tested someone you trusted," she said. "Someone who's been in your life for years." My vision tunneled. My mind raced through possibilities, mentors, friends, extended family. Each option felt worse than the last. "No," I said quietly. "You wouldn't." Lena's breath caught beside me. I turned to her slowly, dread coiling tighter with every inch. "Lena," I said, dread coiling tighter with every inch. "Lena, what did they do?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flicked to my parents, then back to me. "They asked me for a sample," she said carefully. The words hit me like a physical blow. "For what?" I whispered. "They said it was for a medical study," she continued. "They used my work as an excuse. I didn't know what they were really testing for until the results came back." My father nodded once. "And those results," he said, "raised even more questions." "Questions about what?" I asked, though my body already felt like it was bracing for impact. "About whether you were the only one who had been misled. About whether the truth had been standing next to you this whole time." The room fell silent again, heavier than before. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother finally looked up at me, eyes hollow. The test showed a partial genetic match, she said, close enough to suggest a shared biological connection. My chest constricted painfully. Between me and Lena? Lena shook her head quickly. No, she said, not siblings, something else. I felt dizzy. Then what? My father spoke the words slowly, as if dragging them out made them easier to bear. A paternal overlap. I stared at him. Explain? He rubbed his face with both hands. The man you met tonight, he said, nodding towards Sarah's companion, wasn't just present when you were born. The room seemed to hold its breath. He was involved with more than one agreement, more than one family. My blood ran cold. You're saying, I began, that he may be biologically connected to someone else in your life, my mother finished. My heart slammed violently in my chest as understanding dawned, not fully, not cleanly, but enough to terrify me. I turned slowly toward the man who started all of this. Who else? I asked. He looked devastated. I didn't know, he said hoarsely. I swear I didn't know. Know what? That the past would collide like this, he replied, that you'd all be in the same room. Lena took a step back from me, shock written across her face. Are you saying, she whispered, that I? The man nodded, tears finally spilling over. I believe I may be your biological father, too. The words detonated in the room, gasps, cries, disbelief. I felt like I was falling, through layers of truth, through years of assumption, through an identity that no longer held its shape. I looked at Lena, my best friend, my chosen family, the person who knew me better than anyone, and suddenly the world rearranged itself in the most terrifying way imaginable. This can't be real, I whispered. My father sank into a chair, defeated. That, he said quietly, is why we panicked. I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because it was unbearable. You panicked? I said. So you decided to destroy me in public? My mother sobbed openly now. No one moved to comfort her. I looked between Lena and the man, between the past and the present colliding violently in front of me. What does this make us? I asked Lena, my voice breaking. She looked at me, eyes filled with fear and grief and something like determination. I don't know, she said, but I know we're not letting them control what happens next. Before I could respond, the man spoke again, his voice barely holding together. There's one more thing, he said. Every muscle in my body tensed. If I'm right, he continued, then the DNA test your parents shared tonight wasn't just incomplete. He looked directly at me. It was wrong. The room exploded into chaos once more, but this time I didn't hear it, because all I could think was, if the test was wrong, then what else about my life had been a lie? And somewhere deep inside, I felt the terrifying certainty that the truth, when it finally arrived, would cost me everything I had left. Silence fell in the room. Not the awkward kind, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that feels heavy, charged, dangerous. The kind that makes your skin prickle and your instincts scream that something irreversible is about to happen. If the test was wrong, I said slowly, then what was this all for? No one answered. My parents looked broken, not guilty, broken. The kind of people who had pulled too hard on a thread and watched their entire reality unravel in their hands. Lena stepped closer to me, her shoulder brushing mine. This doesn't make sense, she whispered. DNA tests don't just get things wrong like that. They do when people choose which data to show, the man said quietly. Every head snapped toward him. What do you mean? I asked. He took a shaky breath. Because lab results don't speak, he said. People do, and people choose what to reveal. My father looked up sharply. That's a lie. The man met his gaze. Then show them the full report, he said. A pause. Too long. My stomach dropped. What full report? I asked. My mother's lips trembled. She looked at the envelope on the table like it was a weapon. She whispered, "There was more than one page." The room erupted again. "You edited it?" someone shouted. "You filtered the results?" another voice yelled. My father stood up abruptly. "Enough!" he roared. "This is not a courtroom." "No," I said coldly. "It's worse. It's my life." I walked to the table and picked up the scattered papers. My hands were steady in a way that felt unreal, like my body had gone into shock and decided to protect me from myself. "There are missing sections," Lita said, scanning them over my shoulder. "Where are the rest?" I asked. My mother broke. "We didn't want you to see them," she sobbed. "We didn't understand them." "That's not the same as not wanting me to understand them," I replied. She collapsed into the chair. The man stepped forward. "Because the full test doesn't point to a single father," he said. The room went still. "What?" I whispered. "It suggests multiple potential matches because the genetic markers overlap in ways that only happen in very specific conditions." I felt my chest tighten painfully. "Say it clearly." He looked directly at me. "It suggests assisted reproduction," he said. "Multiple donors, multiple sources." The word hit like a hammer. "Artificial?" I asked. He nodded. "Or experimental." My knees almost gave out. "What kind of experiment?" I demanded. My father laughed bitterly. "Not a lab experiment," he said. "A social one." I turned to him sharply. "Explain, now." He rubbed his face, his voice hollow. "We couldn't have children," he said. "We tried for years. Nothing worked. Then we were introduced to a private medical network, discreet, expensive, experimental." My mother sobbed harder. "They offered solutions," he continued. "Multiple genetic sources, surrogacy, donor material, probability modeling." Lena stared at him in horror. "You engineered a child?" "We tried to build a family," he snapped. "At any cost," I said. The man closed his eyes. "They weren't the only ones," he said quietly. "Other couples, other contracts, other children." The room felt like it was collapsing inward. "You're saying I'm not just adopted," I said slowly. "I'm not just born from a surrogate." I looked at him. "I'm a product." The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "No," he said quickly. "You're a person, always a person." "But they didn't see me that way," I replied, turning to my parents. "Did you?" My mother shook her head violently. "We loved you," she cried. "We still love you." "But you owned me," I said. "You controlled my story, my origin, my identity." Silence answered me. Lena whispered, "There could be others." The man nodded. "There are." The room gasped. "Others like me?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Other children born through the same network." My mind raced. "Where are they?" He said some don't know. Some were told partial truths. Some were told lies. "And some," I said slowly, "are probably in this city." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. My chest tightened with a new kind of fear, not just personal, but systemic. This wasn't a family secret. This was a buried system, a business, a market. "You didn't humiliate me because of DNA," I said to my parents. "You humiliated me because you were afraid the truth would leak." My father looked away. "You weren't protecting me," I continued. "You were protecting yourselves." My mother whispered, "We were protecting the life we built at the cost of mine." The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't confusion, it was comprehension. I looked at Lena. "This doesn't change us," I said firmly. "Whatever this is, it doesn't rewrite what we are." She nodded, tears streaming. "I know." I looked at Sarah, standing near the door, silent, overwhelmed, broken by a truth she never agreed to carry. "You didn't do this," I said. She shook her head. "But I was part of it." "So was I," the man said. "And I'm sorry." I took a deep breath. All of you, I said, turning to my parents, tried to control the story. I gestured to the room. But stories don't stay buried. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear anymore, not shock. Clarity, resolve. If there are others like me, I said firmly, they deserve the truth. My father looked up sharply. You don't understand what you're threatening. I do, and I'm not afraid of it. The room buzzed with tension, fear, anticipation, because everyone understood what this meant. This wasn't just a family collapse, this was exposure. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the next step wouldn't be quiet, private, or safe. It would be public, it would be explosive, and it would change more than just my life. The moment the word public settled into the room, everything changed. People weren't just guests anymore. They were witnesses, potential storytellers, loose ends my parents could no longer control. You can't do this, my father said, his voice low, urgent now, not angry, afraid. You don't understand the contracts involved, the people involved. I met his gaze without blinking. You mean the ones who thought they could engineer human beings and bury the evidence? Lena squeezed my hand. If this is real, she said, it's bigger than all of us. It is, the man confirmed, and that's exactly why it was hidden. Someone in the crowd finally said what everyone was thinking. Why hasn't this ever come out before? The man answered immediately. Because people like your parents paid to make sure it didn't. The accusation landed like a gunshot. My mother stood abruptly. That's not fair, she cried. We didn't create that system. We were desperate, vulnerable. They targeted people like us. And then you benefited from it, I said coldly, for 30 years. She reached for me instinctively. I stepped back. That rejection seemed to fracture something in her. She collapsed again, sobbing uncontrollably. My father turned to the room. You're all enjoying this, he snapped, like it's entertainment. No, Lena replied. We're realizing we were never supposed to know. Phones began to appear. One, then another, then several. I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was the moment. Stop recording, my father barked. No, I said, not loudly, not dramatically, just no. Everyone froze. This story belongs to me, I continued, not to you, not to whatever organization you were involved with, and not to anyone who thinks humiliation is an acceptable substitute for honesty. I turned to the man. You said there are others. Yes, he replied. How many? He hesitated. Dozens, maybe more. A sharp inhale swept the room. Do they know? I asked. Some suspect, most don't. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with responsibility. My entire life, I said slowly, I thought something about me was wrong, that I didn't quite fit, that I had to earn my place. My parents didn't look up. And tonight, you tried to confirm that fear in front of everyone I care about. I turned to the crowd, but what you actually exposed is that the shame was never mine. Silence. Then someone clapped. One person, hesitant, uncertain, then another, then several. My father stared around the room, stunned, as control slipped completely from his grasp. You're making a mistake, he warned me. There will be legal consequences. I nodded. I hope so. That surprised him, because if this is real, I said, then it deserves sunlight, scrutiny, accountability. Lena stepped forward beside me. You won't do this alone. I looked at her. You don't have to. I want to, she said firmly. Whatever this makes us, we face it together. The man swallowed hard. There are records, he said. Names, dates, facilities. My father lunged toward him. You said you destroyed them. He replied, I hid them. There's a difference. That was it. My father stopped moving, defeated. I felt something strange then, not triumph, not revenge, relief. Because the truth, once spoken, had weight, but it also had gravity. It pulled lies out of hiding. It rearranged the room. I looked around at the people who had come to celebrate my birth and instead watched its truth explode. "This ends tonight," I said, "one way or another." Security finally arrived, too late to stop anything, just in time to witness the aftermath. Guests were escorted out in stunned silence, whispers following them like smoke. When the room was almost empty, I stood in the wreckage, chairs askew, cake untouched, DNA papers scattered like confetti from a nightmare. My parents sat together, older than I'd ever seen them. Sarah stood near the door, uncertain, afraid to hope. Lena stood beside me, steady. "This doesn't make us less," I said quietly. "It makes us honest." My father looked up at me for the last time that night. "What are you going to do?" I didn't hesitate. "I'm going to tell my story. All of it." And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. Because once the truth is spoken out loud, it doesn't just change the past, it demands a future. The room emptied faster than I expected. Not with chaos, not with shouting, but with a quiet, stunned retreat, the kind that happens when people realize they've witnessed something that will follow them home, sit with them in the dark, and ask uncomfortable questions about truth, loyalty, and silence. When the doors finally closed, it was just us. Me, Lena, Sarah, the man who had carried guilt longer than I'd been alive, and my parents, sitting together, smaller, fragile, stripped of authority. For the first time that night, no one was performing. No audience, no microphones, no curated truth, just consequences. I walked to the center of the room and picked up the DNA papers one last time. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. They no longer defined me. "I want you to hear this," I said quietly, breaking the silence. Everyone looked up. "My entire life," I continued, "I tried to earn something that should have been freely given. Belonging, honesty, safety." My mother's shoulders shook. "And tonight," I said, "you thought revealing biology would explain everything. But biology didn't hurt me." I looked directly at them. Secrecy did. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had nothing prepared. I turned to Sarah. "You didn't abandon me," I said. "You were removed from the story." She covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. "I never stopped thinking about you," she whispered. "I know," I replied, "and I did. Somehow, I always had." I turned to the man. "You didn't just carry guilt," I said. "You carried truth alone. That was never fair." He nodded, broken. "I thought silence was the least harmful option." "It rarely is," I said gently. Then I looked at Lena, my anchor through the storm. "Whatever this makes us," I said, "it doesn't erase what we chose." She smiled through tears. "Family isn't a lab result." "No," I agreed. "It's accountability." I took a deep breath. This is where I draw the line. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. My parents flinched. "I'm not cutting you out, but I am cutting off control." They nodded slowly. They understood, finally. "I'm telling my story, publicly, fully, not to punish you, but to make sure this never happens to someone else." My father whispered, "You'll destroy everything." "No," I said calmly, "I'll reveal it. There's a difference." We left shortly after. No dramatic exit, no shouting, just the quiet ending of something that had lived too long in the dark. Outside, the night air felt different, lighter somehow. I didn't know what the future held. Lawyers, headlines, conversations I wasn't ready for, relationships that would change forever. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the truth catching up to me, because it already had. I went home that night and sat alone in the dark, replaying everything, not with panic, but with clarity. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my story. It was about every person who's been told they should be grateful for lies, every child who felt off but was never allowed to ask why, every family that chose image over integrity. Truth doesn't destroy families. Silence does. If there's one thing turning 30 taught me, it's this. You don't owe anyone comfort at the expense of your identity. And if someone humiliates you with truth, ask yourself what they're trying to protect, because real truth doesn't need a stage. It just needs courage.